since COVID, what I've seen is that a lot of companies, right, in order to save costs or just because they realize that everyone can work remote, have kind of downsized their physical presence in the US. So whether it's H-1B or an EB-1C or L-1, I've seen a lot of clients downsize their US, but that presents a bit of a challenge, right? Because the USCIS regulations have more of a standard for a traditional operation in the US. So we're looking for lease agreements, we're looking for phone numbers, we're looking for a mailing address that is tied to a physical office. And so I think there have been a lot of challenges on, do we need to get an office? Is it okay that we have a virtual office? We have this mailing agreement. Is that okay? So we're in the gray, right? For an L-1A new office, it's very clear that you have to have a physical office. EB-1C is not as clear, but you should still have sufficient workspace, and you have to explain. A lot of it has to be in context of the nature of the business, right? So as long as you can explain it, I'm always telling my clients, let's use our common sense, like what makes sense. That's our strongest argument, really, because I can't give them a yes or no, it's going to work. It's really subjective. Lawyering is an art. It's not a science. It's not a formula. It's how you make that best argument. How do you present it, right? So we're always trying to think, like, first tell me how this actually works, and then let's see how we can present it the best way. For certain visa types, there are certain provisions that say, like in the law, that you need to have a physical office, sufficient physical premise. But how do you interpret that, right? And it should make sense in light of the business. So I'm like, if you're going to open a boba store, you need to have an office lease. That's black and white. But what if you're a photographer? Maybe you don't need an office space. Maybe you can just do everything from home. But is that enough? You're doing an E-2 and you have to show that you have substantial investment. The officer might say this is not sufficient investment, or it might say you don't really have a footprint enough in the US to show that, it's a business operation. Right? So it really depends. And I know people hate hearing it really depends because they're always like, how much do I need to invest if you're doing E2? Or is this enough employees if you're doing an L1? I'm like, well, it depends. It really does. And that's where that art comes in. The dilemma for the client is, do we need a US office, right? So going back and forth, the pros and the cons. And first of all, do they need an office space, right? A lot of times they're like, no. But let's talk about the business. Would the company benefit from having an office space? As a business immigration attorney, I'm not just looking at immigration. I'm also playing the role of corporate counsel, helping them really set up the business. If it makes sense to have a store or an office space, let's go ahead and do that. Maybe it's a win for the business and it helps your visa case, right? But for certain clients, it doesn't make sense at all. Our employees are scattered across the US. Maybe they're focusing on sales, and for them, it makes more sense for them to have a virtual office because, one, they want to get the best talent and they want to not limit it to a certain location. Two, because they're doing national sales, they want salespeople in all different states. So in these types of situations, okay, then how can we argue for a virtual office? If you're going to have a virtual office, how are you getting your mail? Who's answering the phone calls? Do you have a receptionist? And, some of the bigger companies now that, like WeWork, Regis, right? They have services where you can almost, you have a virtual office, but you can have a meeting space. You have a central meeting space. You have a mailing address. You have someone answering your calls. Then it's more understandable, right? How you're able to have a virtual office, but have all these business services. So you're able to run your operations in the US in a way that makes sense. So for a number of clients, some clients just to have a physical office space, some clients just to do the WeWork, Regis route, and having a meeting space with some of those businesses. And some clients chose to do a different way. And I don't think this trend is going to stop, right? More and more as businesses evolve, it'll be interesting to see if USCIS will also evolve its adjudication or if it'll continue to be really strict and kind of stick to that traditional, business model.